Okay, John's Gospel, chapter 21. So, this is after the crucifixion. It's after the resurrection. If my memory serves me right, I think this was the evening of the first day of the resurrection. It's either the evening of the first day of the resurrection or it's 1 week later. I can't remember right now. But afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. And let's see. Simon Peter, Thomas, who's also called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and that was James and John, and 2 other disciples were together. So Peter, he said, I'm going to go fishing. Doesn't say why, but we can guess. That was his trade before he began to follow Jesus. So maybe he needed, not only was it his trade, but his hobby as well. So maybe he needed some money, because they would catch fish. Of course, they would sell them at the market. Maybe they were hungry, because, fish, that was a real staple of their diet back in that day. There's something soothing. There's something calming. There's something relaxing about being around the water. You guys, you have your kayaks. I don't know how calming that would be for me. I think I'd be afraid I'd fall off the kayak and go in the water. But, there's something calming around being around the water. I remember years ago, seems like everything that I remember as a child, I was around 10 or 12, somewhere around there. My father took us to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, because he had a friend that lived down there. Female friend. So she had a beach house, right? This was before they built all those big hotels on Myrtle Beach. There used to be homes there, beachfront houses. So they had an apartment downstairs, and that's where we were staying. And, I remember still as a child, we went to sleep with, it was like a little apartment down there, and we had the window open. And just hearing, in the morning, there's just something fresh and something just full of life when you get around the beach. And there's that ocean breeze, and you hear the waves coming in and the seagulls. But here they were at the Sea of Galilee, and I know even for Bev and I, and I'm sure for you guys here, when you go to, we have developed a new love for Pontotoony State Park. We love the park, we love the lake. And in the summertime, when we're able to get on our boat and just get out on the lake, there's just something very calming about that. And remember what these disciples have just been through. The Garden of Gethsemane. And fighting with those temple guards, and Peter finally grabbing one of the swords, and he went for the high priest, his servant, Malchus was his name. And he wasn't a very good swordsman, because he was going for his head and all he got was his ear. So, fighting with those temple guards. hiding from the religious leaders. And one of the servant girls, she said, well, you're one of them, aren't you? And Peter denied the Lord 3 times and then finally cursed that he didn't know him. All of that stress, the fear, the anxiety, the depression, the worry, everything that those disciples, then finally the crucifixion. Everything that they had gone through, maybe they just wanted to get out down into the water. Just to, I don't know, somehow find some peace maybe. Peter says, I'm going to fish you. And so the other disciples, they said, well, we'll go with you. So you see, even there, the leadership that Peter had over the other disciples. So they went out, they got into the boat. But that night, they caught nothing. I like to eat fish. I like with Bev's brother-in-law, that's Jackie's husband, Todd. He has a big boat. He goes up to Lake Erie. He fishes for walleye. Every now and then he invites me, and whenever he invites me, I try to go because he likes to fish, but he doesn't like to eat fish. So he usually winds up giving me all the fillets, which, I don't complain. So I have all the fish in our freezer is gone. So I saw him the other day and I said, hey, I'm ready when you're ready. He said, how'd you like to go ice fishing with me? I said, let me think about it. No. You're not going to catch me on the ice. I'm not going to get on the ice to fish. No way, not happening. So, I like to, now fishing on Lake Erie is exciting, But, just to sit on the shore and get a night crawler and put it on your hook and throw it out in the water, I'd rather watch paint dry. I think and Bo, he fishes every day. But he has it down to a science. Every time those guys go out, they catch fish. So anyway, I know what it's like to go out there and fish for an hour or two and catch nothing. This past summer, I took our grandson, Hudson, out to this lake in, it's on a Mormon campground. And it's a big lake, so we asked permission. They always let us fish there. So we fished for about an hour or two. We literally fished all around that lake. Nothing. It was at nighttime. I wanted to go home. He didn't want to go home till he caught a fish. And he wasn't kidding. So I said, look, and I was right by him. I brought the car over. I said, I'll sit in the car. So he was out on the dock, and it's at nighttime. So he's like, the mosquitoes were just eating him alive. But he wanted to catch that. Finally, he gave up. And he came in. The next day, boy, you should have seen him. He had mosquito bites all over him. So these guys, they fished all day, all night. They caught nothing. And actually, they spent the night on the water. I wanted to, when we got our boat, I wanted to do that. I told Beverly, son, do you know if you're allowed to do that, Dick? Are you allowed to spend the night on drop anchor and just... No. I've seen guys, when we're coming in sometimes at 8:30 at night in the summer, guys are just going out. Yeah. And I'm wondering if they spend the night on the lake. I don't know.
Well, yeah. But he was talking about the gatehouse there. A lot of guys get down there at night and fish in the
By that dam.
campers and stuff there, but that was illegal. This one patrolman, which nobody liked, he thought he was a state cop or something, you know.
Marty Fife.
He went down there and he tried to throw this guy out. And the story was, he told this guy, he says, "You're going to get out of here, it's going to cost you something." And he says, "What's it going to cost me?" He says, "It's going to cost you $10. The patrolman told this himself. He says, "When I woke up, I had a $10 bill piped on my shirt, you know, pinned on my shirt, and the guy was gone."
Oh, what did he punched him and knocked him out?
Yeah. But it's illegal. You can fish off the bank there, but don't take your camper down there and camp there overnight.
See?
That's illegal.
Well, I told Beverly when we first got our boat, I said, you know, and I didn't know the rule there. I said, I'd like to come here some night and just drop anchor and just under the stars and just spend the night on the lake. So our neighbor, he came out. Well, I think he asked us. He said, "Do you find any spiders on your boat?" I says, "No." I said, "I haven't seen one." Wouldn't you know it? After he said that, we went out, and I'm seeing spiders everywhere. So I told Beverly, I says, "Remember when I said that I'd like to spend the night on the lake?" Well, forget about that.
Well, I don't think that's illegal. You could spend a night on the lake. That's just like the gate outside. They had them buoys there, and if you got inside them buoys, you could be in trouble.
Oh, I believe it.
Well, we're talking about this.
It's so shallow over there.
Yeah. Well, it isn't too shallow there.
By beyond those buoys, unless I'm mistaken. You know where the dam is, and there's two buoys. You know, I think it's shallow in over there. On the other side of the
There's a
buoys.
channel going to the gatehouse.
Yeah.
And we're getting off track
Talking
here.
about the overflow.
Yeah, we're by where the overflow is. Where it
But
goes down there.
your brother-in-law, Don, that's up at Panatuning is where I met him.
Yeah.
One day I was going in for a bite of lunch here at the boat livery there in Jamestown, and he was coming out. He said something to me, and I said something to him, and it's not, I didn't, after we started this church and stuff, he kept looking at me and looking at me. He says, "Do you work at Panatuning?" I says, "Well, I did." Well, he remembered when we crossed paths there.
Oh, okay.
And that's where he had his boat at, was the type of boat that he had.
Okay, so they spent the night on the lake. They caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus, he's standing on the shore, but the disciples did not recognize it was him. So he called out, he said, "Friends," he said, "do you have any fish?" Nothing more gets on your nerves more than when you fish all day, fish all night, you haven't caught anything, and then somebody comes by and says, "Did you catch anything?" No, they answered. He says, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some." Now remember, they fished all day, they fished all night. I'm sure they cast that net all around that boat, all around that lake. Isn't it something that the Lord said, cast your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. I'm sure I could say this for many of us, that for many years in my life I was casting my net on the wrong side of the boat and I wasn't catching anything. But when you obey the Lord, in your life and you start casting your net on the right side of the boat, that's when you start finding God's blessings in life. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because there was a large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved, that was the Apostle John, he said to Peter, "It's the Lord." As soon as Simon heard him say it was the Lord, he wrapped himself in his outer garment, for he had taken it off. He jumped into the water, and the other disciples, they followed him with the boat, towing in the net full of fish. For they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. Well, you're probably tired of hearing about this, but again, when Bev and I were in Israel, we took a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee, and they took us right to this place right here where this story happened. And you might say, well, how do they know? How do they know? I mean, Sea of Galilee is pretty big. How do they know that that was the exact location right there where this story took place? Well, the Byzantine church many years ago built a church on that exact location. And how do they know that that was the location? Because what the early church did was they venerated, and what do I mean they venerated? They showed special remembrance of certain places where the Lord did special things. They remembered where those locations were. And through word of mouth over the years, they knew that this happened over there, this happened over there, this happened over there. And you and I know, when something special happens in our life, we remember that place, don't we? Bev, when you and I had our first date, where'd we go? Hickory Grove. I mean, there's just certain things you just remember in the places, the locations, when something special happens. And so the early church venerated, they remembered, they showed special remembrance and reverence to where this story happened. And so the Byzantine church, they built a church right on this location. So our boat on the Sea of Galilee, it parked about 100 yards off the shore where this story happened. Our boat had to have been very near where the disciples' boat was. And I forget who it was. It was either our tour guide, Richard, somebody shared the devotion. They read the scripture right there. So, when they landed, they saw a fire burning with coals. And there was some fish on it and bread. The Lord, he cooked his disciples breakfast. Imagine that. There's some hot, fiery coals with some fish on it and bread. And this follows right on the heels of them abandoning him and deserting him. Sometimes I think, what would have my attitude been at that time? Jesus cooked his disciples breakfast, he just that act of love. I think I would have been like, when they were out on the boat and I was on the shore, I knew it. 5 minutes after I was gone, you guys be back doing your own thing. I think that would have been me. But that wasn't the Lord. He cooked them breakfast. It was always that love that bound their heart to the heart of Jesus' heart with cords of love that couldn't be severed. So Jesus said, bring some of the fish you just caught. So Simon, he climbed back into the boat. They dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, not those little small ones that whenever I went to Pymatuning or where I would go to Shenango Reservoir, I'd always catch those little perch that were about this big. You could use them for bait fish, for the bigger fish. Full of large fish because God is a good God. Large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. You know, one of the things I love about the Bible? It's precision. The Bible is so precise. And it's a book full of detail. I love that about the Bible. It is a book of detail. Geez. If you're reading in some places, you know, even in Matthew and Luke, it gives the lineage and the genealogy. This one begot this one, this one begot this one, this one begot this one, this one begot this one. You know, it tells you, like even with David and Goliath, how much his armor weighed. And, you know, there was 153 fish here. There was 120 in the upper room. There were 12 disciples. Jesus, he sent his, you know, there were 5,000 when he was on the Mount of Beatitudes. There were 5,000 men plus women and children. It's a book of precision and detail. It's so precise. 153 fish. What's so important? What's so significant about that? Our tour guide, Richard, who was a Messianic Jew, you know, he told us that in the, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but in the Hebrew language, numbers correspond with letters and words. There's some kind of connection between numbers and letters and words in the Hebrew language. And for 153, in Hebrew, it's B'nai Elohim. B'nai Elohim. 153. B'nai Elohim. What does B'nai Elohim mean? Sons of God. So here you have this great catch of these large fish in this net, and the net, as full as it is, it's not breaking. Remember what Jesus told Peter and those early disciples when he called them? He said, you know, they were down at the nets, down by their boats. He said, come follow me. I'll make you fishers of men. So that symbolizes the church. And there's so many fish that the net is not breaking. And that's the undergirding of God's grace in that net. Not one was lost. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples even dared to ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. And Jesus came, he took bread, he gave it to them. He did the same with the fish. And this was the third time that Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. Now that's a nice story. And it can end right there. And it's beautiful. But the story doesn't end there. I'm sure the disciples were there, they're eating. I'm sure Jesus was standing there watching his disciples. When the time was right, he got Peter off by himself. Jesus had special designs on Peter. He had a special plan for his life. This was that, and Jesus loved Peter. He was that sheep that didn't know when to keep his mouth shut. He always had something to say about something. But Jesus, he looked beyond his goofiness and his waywardness. He saw his heart. The heart of that man. I'm sure it hurt Jesus when Peter denied him 3 times. But there's that good shepherd. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. That rod that the shepherd uses to guide his sheep, and the staff to protect his sheep. And also that it has a little crook on it that when the sheep is going his way, he brings that sheep back to the fold. So Jesus is now alone with Peter. And they're having this very personal and private conversation just between Jesus and Peter. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Now, if you remember, Peter professed to have a special love for Jesus that none of the other disciples had. He said, Lord, if I have to go to prison for you, I'll go to prison for you. If I have to die for you, I will. So he professed to have a special love for Jesus that none of the other disciples had. So when Jesus said, do you love me more than these? In the original Greek language, he uses the word agape. And that's God's love, which is a perfect love, a sacrificial love that you're really willing to lay your life down for another person. He said, Peter, do you agape me more than these? And so Peter responds, he said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. But he uses a lesser, this word here is phileo in the Greek. It's human love. The love we have for one another as friends. The city of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, that's where they get that word from the Greek word phileo. The kind of love that friends have for one another. And that's the word that Peter used back at Jesus. So he said, feed my lambs. Those are the little ones. That's what Donna's doing right now. And what Beverly does. And what Robin does. We don't have a lot of lambs in our church, but we have a few. You have Reese. You have Jaden. You have Noah. You have Piper, Bailey. Those little ones. Those are the Lord's lambs. He said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he used that word agape again. He said, yes, Lord, you know that I have brotherly affection for you, Lord. He said, to take care of my sheep. And this is what a pastor does. He takes care of the sheep. That's that pastoral care the pastor has for the love and the care he has for his sheep. Third time, he said to him, Simon, son of John. So Jesus, he realized he wasn't getting any traction there with Peter. Peter, are you really willing to lay your life down for me? So he comes down to Peter's level and he said, Peter, do you really have brotherly affection for me? And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you really love me? And he said, Lord, you know all things. You know I have brotherly affection for you. And then Jesus said, feed my sheep. And that's what we're doing right now. You feed them on the Word of God.